And a very warm welcome to you. I'm Hayley Palmer. Really good to have you here with me on the show this evening, especially as we are joined by founder member of Spandau Ballet, Steve Norman. We'll be catching up with him after this. Steve, it's great to have you on the show. How are you?
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Hayley. Real pleasure to do something in these times.
I know. It's crazy times, isn't it? But thank you for coming on the show and cheering us up here on the Memory Lane 80s. And I know lockdown has been a bit of a hard time for you, but also a special time for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, because about 18 months ago, my mother had a stroke. She's in her 80s. And so I became her carer since that point. Right. And then about a year ago, we had lockdown, of course, but she kind of got progressively sicker. And then, we really were with her for her last months. And we managed to go all the way to the end with myself, and it was only myself and Sabrina locked down, of course, with Mum. And we just had the most brilliant time, and we were lucky with it because if it hadn't been for COVID, we wouldn't have had that special quality time with her. But obviously that was great. A lot of people have suffered. Now, bless you, Mum. She's now she's passed on. I've got a little bit more time. It's kind of weird. So in one way, it's very tragic, but in another way, it's beautiful, and I'm very lucky and grateful for that.
It's nice that you had special times, isn't it? So I can completely understand
definitely.
that. Of course. Yeah. Well, we're going to go into the first song on tonight's show, True. One of your trademark saxophones on this song here. And, you're a very versatile musician, aren't you? You can pretty much turn your hand to any musical instrument.
I don't know what it is. I'm not saying I can do that with every instrument, but that seemed to be a forte when I was growing up. I just picked something up and I could get a little tune out of it after a little while, whether at dinner with, knives on glasses or something.
I can do that.
There's always a sound, There's always a sound in it. I go around tapping furniture to see where the resonant sort of pain of wood is, It's a musical world, and I love it. That's what I do. But that's very sweet of you to say so.
Well, you do it brilliantly. Well, we're going to play out the song. It was #1 in 21 different countries. That's unbelievable. So here it is. It's True, and we will see you after. Now, Steve, I want to rewind a little bit how everything started for you. You and Gary were school friends, weren't you, in Islington? And that's kind of how it all began, right?
Yeah, we gravitated towards each other because we were in the same class at school, and with a love of guitars, I think. And so what we did when we was about 13, 14, 15, started going out, just looking at bands like you do when you're a teenager. And we were seeing bands like AC/DC, I don't know, Eddie and the Hot Rods, a lot of R&B bands, Secret Affair from the mod thing. And, that's really how we knew about where to play. So when we formed the band, it was like, come on, you and me, we were mates, 2 guitarists together. And started rehearsing in the school drama room, I think it was.
Really?
Yeah, John, they used to, that's right, in the lunch times, I used to get this drum kit out because I was a frustrated drummer, could never afford a drum kit, that's why I ended up on the guitar and all the other stuff. But so I set this drum kit up, and John Keeble came down, and that's even though he was in school, he was a year above, and I'd never met him. So we hooked up because of the drum kit. And Tony came up to me in a school common room and said, "Here, I hear you're looking for someone in your band." He's a big guy, and I'm looking up at him like this, big black leather jacket, he's got a lot of front, Tony. So I said, "Oh, well, come down," and he did. Martin came a couple of years later, as you know, and I think it was a year or so later that we changed our name and became Spandau Ballet.
Yeah. And where did the name come from?
It was a friend of ours called Robert Elms that saw it on a toilet wall. So legend has it, in Berlin, because they used to go to Berlin all the time, and him and Rusty Egan from the Blitz, they kind of went out there. Rusty, you're going to I'm leading up to the, our first single and stuff, because we ended up going to this club called the Blitz and Billy's, where Steve Strange was on the door. So he was kind of responsible for how the 80s was going to look by who he let in, and the people that were the regulars, of course. And also the music was Rusty. He ushered in electronica, I remember, and brought it all over from that Berlin trip. So from that Berlin trip, we Spandau Ballet got their name, and Rusty Egan brought all these sort of imports, electronic krautrock imports, Kraftwerk, La Dusseldorf, all Neu, Can, Tangerine Dream, and the electronic sound really did sort of pave the way for what the 80s sound like, right? So Rusty's got a huge responsibility. Yeah.
Big shout out to Rusty, yeah. And, you had massive success. You were one of the biggest bands in the world in the 80s. You were in all the magazines, all the papers, sell-out tours, top of the pops. Do you look back, Steve, with those memories and just go, wow, they were really fond, great memories of those times?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I always think now, because it's 40 years since, literally as we speak, the album was in the charts, our first album, first single. And, we've had our squabbles, we've been in and out of court and all that. But at the end of the day, we grew up together.
You're so
we went
close.
through all those great moments together.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just, it's a bit different, I think, if you're on your own. You're like someone like George Michael, of course, he's on his own. That's a huge amount of pressure. You ain't got anyone to share those ups and downs, and everyone's kind of sort of nodding their heads, whatever you want, a little bit of a yes man vibe. When you've got 4 other guys in there, like really pulling you down to earth, taking the rise out of you, something rotten, keeps you on your toes, I tell you. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course.
And creative
you
time.
Remember the fun times.
I had a lovely time. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
And I have to bring up Live Aid. You performed to a global audience of 1.9 billion. That's got to be one of your pinch yourself moments and just go, wow, just incredible.
Yeah, probably our largest gig, I think we had more people watching that. But it obviously wasn't just about us, but the whole event was incredible. I think because normally it's all about the band and, everyone sort of mollycoddles you and... on Live Aid, it wasn't. It was like, if you're not off this stage in 20 minutes, that stage is going to revolve and the plug will come out. And so everyone was really on top of not going over their 20 minutes.
You were filming, weren't you? Is that right?
Oh, well, would you mean like backstage and things? Yeah, well, I had this big sort of camera at the time, and I've got some great footage. It's in our film, Soul Boys of the Western World, a lot of my footage, funny enough. And it's just, Queen and Status Quo larking about, sound checking, and all us guys are sort of head banging along. That's stuff I'll never forget. Still brings a smile on my face, Very, very amazing sort of show that was. Really sort of set the scene for the power of music and charities and that, when all the politicians were struggling to get anything done, So,
well, we're going to take things right back now to cut a long story short. Tell us your memories of this, Steve.
Well, like I say, we'd gone to, I think it's 79, 1980. Our manager, Steve Duggar, he said, you've got to come to this club. It was called Billy's. It was only about 100 people could go in there. But I remember going in there thinking, oh, my God. And literally, first time you descend the stairs, there's this really exotic, pulsy electronic music, which we hadn't really heard before much, except for maybe Kraftwerk. So that in itself, them being confronted with an early sort of Boy George and Marilyn and that, who was experimenting with their makeup. I remember looking at Marilyn and thinking, it's a bit smudgy. You can see what he was doing though. He was going for Marilyn Monroe, and George was experimenting with the geisha look, But it was friends that really helped them to and the clothes. Everyone focused on that. Looked amazing, that club. The people in there. It sounded incredible. It was like, oh my God! It had just come and landed this club, from out of like the club that fell to earth. And before we knew it, we were in the Blitz, and it was a global sensation. It went around the planet, the country, and then went global. And New Romanticism was what it became, But it was an incredibly exciting time. Very creative, the music, 4 on the floor. That affected Spandau's music, so we became less of a rock-based band, groove-wise, to more of a, that sort of dance thing. And from that point on, dance influenced Spandau heavily, So very important at that time.
Yeah, it really was. Well, let's check out the video and we'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Now, Steve, you kind of all went your separate ways, didn't you? And you moved out to Ibiza. You ended up staying there for 12 years, didn't you? Was that kind of a nice sort of change, I guess, from obviously such a busy lifestyle?
It wasn't quite like that. That's very sweet. I was not in a good place because Spandau was sort of imploding at the time. This was 1990, and I think for 1991, 92, I went there in 93 to Ibiza, and I just felt. I realised, not all the band were on the same page anymore, and we weren't talking. So I felt a sense of loss, if I'm honest. So I went to Ibiza, and I got into a relationship. I had my children there in Ibiza. They're half Spanish. So very much I spent 12 years there. And got over Spandau, if I'm honest, and put my head into the dance scene because that's what people do in Ibiza, and the chill out vibe. Yeah. So I had a label, I had lots of compilation records. We signed a couple of DJs, and I played live with a lot of DJs, including Rusty, of course, who we go back, we still perform together even to this day, 40 years later. It's incredible. And I love dance music. I still do soulful house. I worked with Ministry of Sound, Head Candy, with DJs every weekend, all around the world, just playing live sax or sometimes percussion. So I had a great time with them, and it kind of got me chops together sax-wise, And then coincidentally, Spandau reformed. So I was all ready to go.
He's all ready to go. Well, what I would do to be in Ibiza right now after lockdown, I feel like I'm going to need a mad night out in Ibiza after this, for sure. Let's talk about your reunion in 2009, because you had a tour, the Reformation Tour, and you had 3 sellout tours at the O2. I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah. Oh, incredible. I mean, we had no idea if people really were bothered anymore. You don't know until you put the tickets on sale. Yeah. And although they sold well, bearing in mind that it's been 20 years since we were last in a room together, let alone on stage. So I remember we were sort of standing backstage before Dublin Olympia in Dublin, the theatre, and that was our first gig of the tour. And just when the sort of intro tape comes on, that was the moment. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, the whole place erupted and screamed like they used to, over 20 years ago. And we just looked at each other. We couldn't believe it. And that gave us a more of a longevity into, a longer tour. And we got on well and we was doing well, And it was just a wonderful sort of moment that it all came back again, And we became friends again and all that.
Yeah.
Fallen out a bit since, but it's normal.
We won't go there. We're going to talk about Once More. This was your album, and the title track you co-wrote, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It was, Gary had the title and some chords, and we just got together a couple of days around his place. And I think I handled more the lyrics, There's always a bit of a crossover, but the bulk of the lyrics and the music was his, and the lyrics mine, So that was good. We did start off. I thought that was going to lead to more collaborations, but Gary tends to prefer to write on his own, so. Fine.
Okay.
But
I
was really happy about that because it's very Spandau-like. It sounds like Spandau. Yeah. And it really was on the album, which was a collection of sort of acoustic versions of all our other hits, including To Cut Long Story Short and the others. But this one, it was we had all the bells and whistles, electric guitars,
Yeah, well, it was your first Spandau Ballet song in 20 years. I just love this one. Enjoy. With a lot of artists, and I love this story because you got to play saxophone with Iggy Pop, didn't you?
Yeah. And that was a particular highlight. That really was. But his band members, they're friends of mine. And another dear friend of mine, Tom, he sort of kind of put it together and told Iggy that it would be a dream come true for me, So I'm a fan. I absolutely really proud of being a fan of music. And I don't see just because you're suddenly in a position where other people are a fan of yourself that you have to stop being a fan. So Iggy Pop for me was the best bucket list. I went down to France to the a festival he was playing there, and he said, would I go on for the last number, which was Real Wild Child, And so I'm playing saxophone like to punk music nearly all the way through the set to the side of the stage until the last number, and he shouts out and he goes, I heard my name from Spandau Ballet, Steve Norman, where are you, and it was like wow, it was brilliant. So I jumped over there and he looked at me in the eye like that, like, because he said, I got one thing to say to you, mother. I'm a real wild one, boff. And we peeled off to different sides of the stage. And I was in my element for 6 minutes, I tell you. It was great. But I've been lucky in my career to play with such, like people I've admired. Tony Visconti, went on tour with him and the Bowie musicians, Earl Slick, went on tour with him, went to Japan. That was fantastic. Yes. With Bernard Fowler, and a lot of the dance guys, obviously. Who else? Mike Garson, Steve Harley, Cockney Rebel. We've toured together. I know there's so many diverse kind of things. Woody Woodman's here, of course, from the Spiders from Mars. So I've been lucky. I've met a lot of the musicians that Bowie always went to. Yeah. Like Mike Garson. I've performed with him many times. And I'm just very lucky I get to perform with people I've admired growing up. It's brilliant.
Yes. Well, you also perform as a solo artist with your band The Sleeves, which I guess we're hoping for a tour maybe next year?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I've got something, I know when this programme is going out, and by then, you've got an exclusive here, maybe not, but I'm with The Sleeves this time next year. We were going to do it right now to coincide with the release of Spandau's first album, but we're actually going to go out and perform the whole of Journeys to Glory.
Yeah.
I mean, Spandau are not together anymore as it is, so it's the only way really to. And I've spoken to them, and everyone's sort of kind of thumbs up. Well, I haven't spoken to anyone, but the management is, and it's just being proud of that.
We're going to play out my favourite song, Gold. It went to number 2 in 1983. How was this not number 1? I just don't understand. Now I want to talk to you, Steve, about 80s Pioneers, because this is what you've created with your lovely girlfriend and manager Sabrina, isn't it? And I feel like coming out of lockdown, we're all going to need to be a part of this because we love 80s music. It brings back so many memories for us. And you've worked already, haven't you, with some of your friends on this? And I just think it's brilliant.
It's great. I mean, it's weird because it's something that over the years I've always been asked for people's numbers, like Paul Young, friend of mine, Carol Decker, friend of mine, Nick Van Eed, Cutting Crew, close friend of mine, So I'm always giving them those, and then we thought, well, why don't we give it a go ourselves, A lot of work, I've taken on like musical director, producer of the whole thing, let's say an hour and a half, 2 hour show. I'm on stage all the time. I've got my friends there. I just call them, they come, and we all, we even sing on each other's tracks, which I really love. But,
I love
the
that.
80s Pioneers, it's all kind of ready to go. So I'm emceeing it. We have our own house band, which most of it is The Sleeves, some extra players. And you just sort of press go, and we deal with it for whatever the length of that show is. And it's hit upon hit upon hit, like 3-4 tracks each. Big quick turnover because we're in charge of it all, and then we pack up and go, and it's great. I mean, it's such a lot of fun. For example, we played a couple of shows before the whole lockdown thing scuppered everything, of course. But I sang a couple of tunes, and one of them was Through the Barricades, and where the other guys like Paul and Nick Van Eed. And they all took a verse or a couple of lines each, Carol Decker. They're all good sports.
That. Yeah.
And that's what I encourage. Everyone sort of jumps in and mucks in on each other's songs.
That's a real treat for the audience.
Cheesy.
Yeah,
no cheese,
exactly. Well, we love the songs. These songs really do stand the test of time. They bring back so many memories, like I said, for everyone. And especially in lockdown, I know personally, I listen to the songs and... it just brings back good memories, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think now we all need to sort of connect. We all need to get our heads together. And, people are getting really lonely, aren't they? They're suffering from loneliness. And music and things like this brings it back. I just want to be announcing the next tour.
Yeah.
It's going to be a riot.
It's going to be crazy.
I
know.
People are just going to go nuts.
Well, we're going to play out Through the Barricades. I just think this is one of the most... I go as far as saying it's one of the most beautiful ballads I've ever heard.
I agree.
Would you? Yeah.
It's a very special song, yeah. He's a bit of a good songwriter, that Gary Kemp. I'll give him that.
He is. And your saxophone playing, of course, on this one.
That's sweet. Thank you.
We've got to mention that. Oh, well, let's check out the video and we'll see you after. Oh, Steve, it's been such a pleasure and an honour to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for chatting with us and playing out all these hits. It's just been a great evening. Thank you.
You're very sweet, but I'll tell you what, pleasure's all mine. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and revisiting some of those old memories.
Oh, yes, it really is. Well, keep us posted on everything, the tour,
Will do.
Anything else that happens. We want to be the first to know. And
absolutely. Thank you so much for your support, Hayley. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. And for everyone watching in, you know, thank you for coming here.
Thank you. It's Steve Norman, everyone.
Hey. See ya.
Oh, we've now come to the end of the show, but a huge thank you to the brilliant Steve Norman for being an excellent guest on tonight's show, and to you for your support. It really is very much appreciated. Thank you. Now, I will see you same time, same place next week. I'm Hayley Palmer. Stay safe, and I will see you then.